Why extremists always focus on women remains a mystery to me. And they want to control how we dress. They want to control how we act. They even want to control the decisions we make about our own health and our own bodies. Yes, it is hard to believe, but even here at home, we have to stand up for women's rights and reject efforts to marginalize any one of us.
Secretary of State Hillary Clinton making that rare foray into the raging political debate over women's health, with increasing signs that Republicans have been taking a hit over all of this. The Obama campaign today is sending out 1 million mailings to women in more than a dozen battleground states, 3 separate versions targeting mothers, young women, and older women. MSNBC's Richard Louie has been looking more into this effort to court the female vote, and that is going to be pivotal in November, Richard.
Yeah, Chris, no single voting bloc is more important than women. Just look at this number right here. 70,400,000 voted in 2008. The next largest group, that was men, but that was 10 million less. While more of this group does lean Democrat, the key independent women vote is in flux. Let me show you some evidence from the Washington Post here. In 2010, independent women voters favored the GOP by 11% when it came to sharing personal values. Then we had debates over Susan G. Komen, Rush Limbaugh, and contraception coverage. That seesaw has swung in double digits the other way. Independent voters now, you can see that, favoring Democrats by 5 points. Now, women overall, House Republicans led in 2010, getting 51% of women votes. But 2012, our poll shows Democrats winning women for House races 51-36 right now. Republicans, though, are pivoting on the calls of culture war by discussing jobs and the economy for women.
Women care about the economy, they care about their children, and they care about the debt, and they're angry, and they're furious about the entitlement debt that we're leaving our children. And so this
well, hitting similar themes is the president's campaign site, Women for Obama. The president will also give the commencement at the all-woman college Barnard. This recent Democratic ad, in addition, hopes that recent war on women debates will lead to wins for 11 Democratic women senators. The president here wants to build on the 56% of women that he got back in 2008. That was a big number then. And part of that, the Obama campaign caps off March with a Women's Week of Action. Chris, that's phone banks, campus and media events getting the full force of the Obama field operations juggernaut.
All right. Fascinating stuff. Thank you so much, Richard. Joining me now, Washington Post columnist, blogger, and MSNBC policy analyst Ezra Klein, and Neera Tanden, president of the Center for American Progress, who also served as a senior advisor to help the Obama administration pass the health care law. It's good to see both of you. Neera, let me start with you, because I think one of the most fascinating aspects that I've seen in all of this, and I had Richard leave it out because I wanted it. Pollster Peter Hart said that until 6 weeks ago, Democrats suffered from an intensity gap, but women are closing it. What do you think has been the real impact of this whole fight over contraception and women's rights?
Oh, I think the most significant issue is that women see that the Republican Party is willing to put, politics and people like Rush Limbaugh ahead of their own interests. I mean, you see this when Mitt Romney puts forward a very, very weak statement about Rush Limbaugh, saying those aren't the words that he would use. What are the words he would use to describe Sandra Fluke in those gross and horrible terms? So I think the real issue here is that you've seen the intense partisan nature of this debate really reflecting badly on the GOP, and that they've been willing to put this face forward, Rush Limbaugh, on this issue has really meant that women have woken up and recognized on basic health protections, the Republican Party stands against them.
The Republican response has been, and you know this, is that this is not a huge concern. The real women's issue in this campaign is the economy. We just heard Ann Romney talking about it, things like the cost of milk, the cost of gas. A new Washington Post poll does show gas prices are hurting the president. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Ezra? Are these culture wars maybe creating a kind of passing alienation among moderate women, or do you think there's something more significant, more long-term?
First, I should say I like Neera's coining of Rushbaugh for Rush Limbaugh. I think that might stick. You know, this is always a question with these issues, right? We have 7-8 months until the election, and the question is, will this issue decay quickly? Will it remain in the news? Will people forget about it? In 6 months, when we're in October or November, will people be thinking back to March and thinking, man, Rush Limbaugh said something terrible and Mitt Romney didn't stand up for it? On things like that, I'm skeptical, but nevertheless, what this does do, and the thing that's creating a problem for Mitt Romney right now, is it exposes a very unhelpful for him tension in the Republican Party between folks who would like to leave these issues behind. Remember, Mitch Daniels, the governor of Indiana, proposed a social issues truce while the economy was in such pain, and he got torn apart by social conservatives for it. And so, on the other side, these social conservatives who do want to have this argument, who, like Rick Santorum, want to go around the country and explain why birth control is a big problem. And so the question for the Obama campaign and other sort of Democratic surrogates is whether or not they're going to be able to find ways to force Mitt Romney to navigate that tension, or whether Republicans will be able to just shunt this kind of thing to the side until after the election.
Yeah, which is their hope. But in the meantime, you've got the president's campaign putting out 1 million flyers in key battleground states. As Richard was just saying, Nurses for Obama. It's a Women's Week of Action at the end of the month. How do you think this is going to work, Neera? And do you think it pivots a little bit because of the political atmosphere right now?
Well, let me just take on something Ezra said. I mean, I came into politics during the Clarence Thomas hearings. Clarence Thomas hearings happened a year before the election, a full year before the election. And they really motivated women. And the difference we have that year was that we had a number of women Senate candidates running, and this is similarly, we have a breakthrough number of women Senate candidates running. And so I think there's a real potential to keep this going. We'll have more women surrogates out there. And I think the challenge for Republicans is that women will remember these kinds of flashpoints, the Susan Komen issue, this issue, Rush Limbaugh. It's a series of ways in which the Republican Party has seemed on the other side. And that's why I think the president is right to capitalize on this, or the president's campaign is right to capitalize on this while it's fresh in people's memories by sending out these flyers, ensuring that people understand as we go through the second anniversary of the Affordable Care Act that the Affordable Care Act has incredible benefits for women. It ensures that pre-existing conditions and the whole idea that women can be treated separately has been addressed in the Affordable Care Act as the GOP tries to polarize this issue.
And we should say that the Obama campaign had been planning to wrap up its outreach to women to coincide, as you say, with the signing of the health care law, 2 years ago next week. So what do you think, Ezra? Do you think that this is something that we're going to continue to hear the Obama administration keeping alive? To your point about, it's sometimes difficult to say 6 months out what's going to turn a campaign. Well, it's always difficult to say 6 months out what's going to turn a campaign.
Look, I think they'll give it a shot. I mean, for the Health Care Act in particular, what's going to have a lot to do with whether or not, with what the conversation on that looks like, is going to be the Supreme Court rulings. We're moving into oral arguments now, and we should get a ruling on that around June. So depending on what happens there, the conversation over the health care law could be any number of incredibly intense ways. One other point I'd make in addition to what Neera said, though, is that another group of voters that's been strong on this, if you look at the polling, is young voters. A lot of what we're talking about here, birth control, the way Limbaugh went after Sandra Fluck, those are in a way going after young voters as much as they're going after women. I mean, to folks in college, the idea that birth control is not a settled issue, that access to it would not be a settled issue, is astonishing. And these are the kinds of issues that do motivate young people, which are, much like women, constituency the Obama campaign is going to need to activate, much as they did in 2008 if they're going to win again.